of the cybersecurity in an organization. And one thing which I have learned from my experience is that other teams they treat the SOC as the most one of the most technical team in the company, and they treat this team as one of the team they can always rely upon to help them in kind of getting out of any kind of major issues that is happening in an organization. Basically, the cybersecurity issue, for example. Okay, so let's see these terms in much more detail. So the first time I'll be kind of discussing about is policies. So what policy is? So in a layman terms, this policy is like high level, broad direction setting, mandatory setting. So so let's say one of the example is, let's say one of the policy entry will be like, let's say all system plugged into network must have antivirus installed. Okay. Let's say this is one of the statement that is mentioned in the policy. Now, this policy is something approved by the leadership in this case. So this is something everyone needs to follow, no matter you agree or disagree. If this is something written in the policy, you need to kind of follow that for that organization. Maybe for a different organization you work for earlier, you don't need to follow. But if this policy is there, like all system plugged in into the network must have AV, you need to follow that. Otherwise, that will be kind of counted. No matter how layman it looks like, no matter how it looks like, okay, it is not something which is of utmost importance. You need to follow that. If you don't follow that, it will be like for any employee who don't follow that, you need to kind of quickly kind of check, treat that as a kind of policy violation. Okay, so policy overall means that these are kind of a, how to say, the high level documents that set out the organization stance, okay, on specific issues, like let's say data protections or password strength, for example. So let's say one of the policy that organization maintain is that the password strengths will be like, let's say 12 characters with a mix of special characters, alphabets, and integers. So, so everyone needs to kind of follow the policy. Let's say there's an employee who got a laptop, a company-owned laptop, which was following that password policy. Okay, and now let's say just for his or her easiness, what they did is like they changed the password, for an example, to something like ABCD1234, for example, which they think is kind of a good password to maintain. Okay, so in that case, you are allowed to treat that as a policy violation, because what I have seen in most of the cases is that these are few of the things that employee does. Okay, they set up the things with a very weak password just for easiness of logging in, and you can always count that as a policy violation and escalate to HR, or maybe perform an investigation and take some disciplinary action on that employee. Okay, so this policy actually gives a clear statement of the organization intention and principles in relation to the overall security stance. Okay. For example, let's say one of the policy is that all employee must change their password every 90 days. Okay. So this is something, again, no matter the employee want it or not, they need to follow that. Okay. And if it is not followed, what will happen is that the laptop, let's say there's a script which locks which, which makes the laptop unusable. So the employee can't use it. So only when they change the password, they can start using it. Okay. So if you are an analyst in a SOC, as you are, you need to kind of understand these policies so you can help the organization enforce them. And so you also need to have a capability to kind of recognize when those policies are kind of violated. Okay, so this is something about the policy. Now let's talk about the next term, which is standard. So what does standard means? So overall, in layman terms, again, standard means like, first thing is like it is also mandatory, like policies, and it defines how to do this thing and how much to do that thing. Okay, so let's say you have an antivirus on your system, that is a policy, and now the standard will be like how you will configure that antivirus. Like, will it be like, let's say it will block all the communication going outward, or will it be like it will allow you to kind of have certain communication going outside the internet and all? Are you allowed to kind of exclude any folder in your desktop or on a laptop from getting scanned? So this is something like configuration setting for an antivirus, will something will be coming out in the standards. So it is like saying, okay, you need to follow this policy, but how much? Okay, you have an antivirus. Okay, so so thing is that policy says that okay, antivirus is installed, but the standard will say that okay, if even though antivirus is installed, is there a critical function where the antivirus is not needed? Can we disable it even though it's installed? Okay, or let's say, can we change the setting of the antivirus such that it doesn't kind of block any files that is kind of created on the system. So this is something that organizer needs, each team needs to kind of have a separate standards. But this is something they always need to kind of follow the policy. Okay. Now let's discuss more about this standard in a more deeper way. Okay. So standard is something specific mandatory rule or action that actually support the policy. As an example, the antivirus example that I gave. And so what they do, they ensure that certain specifications are met, okay, to achieve the policy objective. So let's say, for instance, if the policy is that all employees must change their password every 90 days, the standard might specify that password must be at least 12 character longs, contain a mix of letter symbols and whatnot. So as an analyst, again, we need to kind of understand this standard. So because we know by policy that every system will have a password, and via standard we will know that okay, what's the complexity of the password. So how this is going to help you in real incident, I will be kind of sharing one example is that let's say I was let's say there was a system which was compromised, and let's say it was a Windows laptop. So one of the thing, and it was also listening on RDP port. RDP means remote desktop protocol. So it allows anyone to kind of have a remote control of the system. So one of the things that normally comes to an analyst is that since this laptop is like RDP enabled, like anyone from outside can control this laptop, it's basically that the password might have been kind of brute force, or someone is knowing it might have been set with a easy password and someone was able to kind of guess that out and log into that system. But once we know that standard, we know that okay, that standard says that the password will be like not weak, not something like ABCD 1 2 3 4. It will be a mix of 12 characters. It will be a mix of characters and all. So we quickly know while just jumping from an incident that there might be a case where RDP might not be the entry factor of the attack because the password is really complex. It's not easy for anyone to kind of brute force and guess the correct password. Okay, because thing is that when you kind of make certain bad password assumption to the system, what will happen is that the IP will be blocked from making any new connection to that system for a certain amount of time, let's say 5 minutes. So this will give an idea that okay, we need to kind of this will give us confidence that maybe the RDP access is not the attack vector, maybe something else. Let's say that phishing email or something vulnerability is also there. So knowing the standards is very important, and see in same way knowing the policies is very important because you will be kind of handling multiple incident where you will kind of encounter okay, let's say one of the guy actually disabled the antivirus for an example. Okay, and you reach out to the guy, you got an alert that the antivirus is disabled. You reach out to the guy, and the guy is like, why there's a need to kind of why there's a need to enable the antivirus, then there's no need to enable the antivirus. This is something that the employee will tell you. So in that case you can support your concern telling that this is the policy URL, policy.com/abcd, the specific ID of the policy. It says that all the antivirus that is installed on the system needs to be enabled. Okay, and that's it, you're done. Now that person can't actually uh, counter you saying any other thing that okay, they are the thing that they did was right. They need to kind of follow that policy no matter what. Okay, and if they don't follow, you can quickly escalate and escalate as a policy violation for that employee. Okay, so this is why we need to kind of know a policy. Knowing a policy will take you out from so many incidents that you will be kind of handling going forward, where you will be kind of getting a backlash from the employee saying that okay, they won't follow this, they won't do this, they won't do this. So in that case, once you have the policy ID in your place, you can just tell them okay, see this policy says that this needs to be done, you need to do it, and if you're not doing that, it will escalate. Okay, so give me 1 minute and I will kind of continue with the rest of our discussion, which is standard procedure, guidelines, and playbook. So give me few seconds. I just need to plug out my mobile. Give me 1 second.